Welcome back to WD
FM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. We're your hosts, Brie Bertoluccini, Content and Research Manager.
and Chris Mullen, Marketing and Editorial Specialist at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Happy February. Glad to be back with you for our monthly Museum Musings episode. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing well. I am in the office for the first time recording this. We'll see how the acoustics go. But also looking forward to the start of the Lunar New Year. This year is the Year of the Dragon. There are a few options of Disney dragons to pick. What would you say is your favorite Disney dragon, Brie?
Yeah, there are a lot to choose from. I have a feeling I know what you would say, Chris, since I have a hint on what one of your favorite movies is that features a dragon. So I'll try to avoid that. I'm thinking of a more Walt Disney centric dragon. So in Chinese culture, the dragon is the only mythological creature on the calendar, and it represents good luck, strength, and power. So, kind of based on that, I'm going to go with Maleficent and her dragon form from 1959 Sleeping Beauty. When she transforms herself into a dragon, she represents that strength and power as she fights off Prince Philip. One would say Philip had that luck on his side fighting this dragon because he goes on to slay Maleficent. Spoiler alert. So, Chris, what about you? What dragon are you highlighting this Lunar New Year?
Well, when you look at the original Disney's Animal Kingdom signage, the dragon that they used for the Beastly Kingdom that didn't get built, no, actually, that's not where I'm going with this. I was actually surprised there were fewer Disney dragons like in the movies than I thought there would be. I think there are just like a few prominent ones that come to mind immediately, and then after that, it becomes slim pickings. So, although I do love my American Dragon Jake Long that I grew up watching on Disney Channel, as you implied, yes, my pick was going to be pretty straightforward. One of my favorite films, Disney or otherwise, is 1998's Mulan. As I've brought up before, seeing that film in theaters with my aunt was one of my most cherished Disney memories. So, an easy choice for my favorite dragon is the Great Stone Dragon that gets his head knocked off in the very beginning. No, just kidding. My favorite Disney dragon is, of course, Mushu. I mean, it was hard to follow a comedic side character so perfectly cast as Robin Williams' Genie in 1992's Aladdin, but Eddie Murphy here was an inspired choice. Now, there are certainly some criticisms of the Mushu character, to some, a representation of the Americanization of an honored Chinese legend, and the kind of slapstick cartoon treatment of an animal with great cultural significance from the place the legend originates, as Brie alluded to earlier. But there's no denying that Mushu stole the show in every scene that he was in and proved not only comic relief in a story of very heavy themes, but a loyal and worthy sidekick that proved his worth several times over. There's a little connection between my pick and your pick because Mushu makes a Sleeping Beauty reference when he has the porridge and is waking Mulan up to leave the camp. So there you go.
Oh, there you go. It took me a second. I was like, "What? There's a little Easter egg in there that I've never caught before." That's so
Two
yeah.
eggs actually, with the rest of with the little bacon and the yeah.
Oh yes, okay. I totally know what you're talking about. I love that scene, and I love Mushu. What a great pick. Mulan is also a top tier favorite of mine. I just got to spend this last weekend celebrating the Lunar New Year at Disney's California Adventure, where Mushu is the talk of the town. He's everywhere, and so it's always a lot of fun. Well, I did want to do kind of like a little special shout out for one major unsung dragon, where dragon is actually in the title. It's the Reluctant Dragon from the 1941 film with the same name. Now, this dragon would rather recite poetry than behave like a traditional dragon. And we have a previous episode on this entire film, so you can scroll back through our podcast feed to learn more on this very cute, very precious Reluctant Dragon.
Oh, I get it. He's unsung because he's not singing. He's reciting poetry. Okay, gotcha. February is also Black History Month, and we wanted to highlight Ron Husband, the first African-American animator and supervising animator for the Walt Disney Studios. He joined Walt Disney Feature Animation in 1975 as an animation trainee and worked for 30 years in that department. Some highlights from his screen credits include, you may have heard of a couple of these, The Fox and the Hound, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Treasure Planet just to name a few.
From 1991 to 1996, Husband was a featured speaker at the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame in Oakland, California, local to us. In December 2010, he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center. Husband authored the book Quick Sketching with Ron Husband, published in 2013, so you can pick that up. In 2021, as part of our Happily Ever After Hours program series, my co-host Tracy Timmer and I got the opportunity to interview Ron. So we decided to pull a couple clips and feature them here. Enjoy these couple clips from that interview.
My passion and knowledge of animation started when I walked into Disney for the first day as a trainee. I knew nothing about animation. I was not, one of the guys, persons who just have seen a animated cartoon and they just want to be an animator. They just want to be an. I had no idea that animation even existed. I didn't know what an animator was and what an animator did. I had no idea whatsoever. I just sort of backed into that because I could always draw. I've been blessed with the ability to draw. And while in college, wanted to be a commercial artist and do books, magazine, illustration. So I took a job doing drafting, and about 2 days into that, I got a call from a Honeywell in West Covina, and they had a job for opening for technical illustrator. And I said, if I want to do something more creative, I have to be around creative people. And the best thing I could think of was to go to art school. And I went to Art Center, and it was in downtown Los Angeles at the time. My instructor happened to be a gentleman by the name of Sam McKim, who worked for Imagineering. And Mr. McKim was teaching a class called Sketching for Illustration. And he told us the class one night about a trainee program that Disney has started to take artists and train them to be animators. I was hungry to do something more creative with my talent. And so I allowed Mr. McKim to make me an appointment with Eric Larson. And Eric was the head of the training department at the time. And he looked at my portfolio, illustration, slick illustration work. And he said, yeah, Ryan, that's nice, but what we want to see is quick sketches. And I had not included any quick sketches in my portfolio. And I had been doing quick sketching since I was in high school. I went home and got 3 sketch pads and I dropped them off at the guard gate, addressed to Eric Larson. And about a week or so later, Eric called or Disney called and said I could start in the trainee program anytime I wanted. So I left my technical illustration job and went to Disney Studios as a trainee. And you got 4 weeks to do a little rough test. And at the end of those 4 weeks, they showed it to review board. And you either were picking up the concepts or you weren't picking up the concepts. So my test was extremely crude and rough, really rough. But they were I was picking up the concepts fast enough, to show that there was some potential there. And there were people coming in from all over the world, literally. Glenn King came in from Cal Arts. He had been to the studio about 6 months before I got there. So at Cal Arts, they have a regular animation program. So he came in with a lot more experience than I did. And I come in at the far end of the scale with no experience. But they took that into consideration when they looked at your test. And I was able to pass the second test. And from there, I went into an in-betweener pool because they were working on the rescuers at the time. And Frank Thomas was a supervising animator, obviously. And I did in-betweens for Frank, and Glenn was doing in-betweens for Ollie Johnson. And we were roomed together. We had a room together from the trainee department, which was on the second floor of the animation building. And Glenn and I have been fast friends for, since that day, February 10th, 1975.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And you mentioned that you mentioned a few, 9 old men, Eric Larson, Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnson, during this kind of period where they were their last kind of final years at the studios, what were some really important animation techniques that they passed down to you?
Every day was a learning experience. And, looking back now, there's a ton of questions that I would have asked, but I was just literally learning how to in between and but the experience of looking over Frank's shoulder as he took my drawings and he looked at them and he flipped through them and made comments and observations and directions as to how this scene could be better. And in the process of doing Frank's in-betweens, he allowed me to do some animation. And I did about 51 feet of animation on the rescuers. But in those days, you had to do 100 feet of animation before you got screen credit. So the animation I did do was on my own time, on weekends and breaks and whatnot, with Frank giving me input as to again how the scene could be improved and how it could be better. And so I learned a lot just by seeing his work ethic, how he planned out a scene, and his beautiful drawing. I mean, he's a master drafts person. And you're just picking up the basics of animation.
Our first question is from Tammy, and she asks, what were you most excited for when learning that you would be the lead animator for Dr. Sweet? And what was your biggest concern about working on this character?
You mentioned specifically Dr. Sweet, and Don Hahn and Gary Trousdale and Kurt Wise. Kurt and Gary were the directors, and they brought me in and said, okay, Ron, think about working on Atlantis. We're going to go from, if you're going to Disneyland, you go direct to Adventureland. It's going to be bombs and explosions. We've been working on, basically musicals, like Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid, and they were musicals driven. This was no musical. It was like bombs and explosions, lots of action, and so yeah, that sounds like something I could work on. And so they had a number of characters that hadn't been cast yet. So, well, which one would you would like to work on? Because Milo's already gone and Leah's gone, so they had several characters that are still. So let me think about it. And a couple of days later, I met Don Hahn, and Don said, over lunch, at lunchtime, I was out sketching, and Don walks out and said, "You're going to do Dr. Sweet." So I've been sort of leaning toward Dr. Sweet, but Don sort of pushed me over the edge. So okay, that works for me. So I was looking at the challenge. It wasn't like I was super elated and really, really happy. It was just the challenge of pulling it off. You're asked to take a character and bring that character to believability. Every character is challenging in the sense that they bring their own degree of difficulty. Phil Morris, the voice of Dr. Sweet, he's got this really rapid delivery. So to be able to get the doctor to talk and not look like his his mouth just going in all, but so that becomes one of the major challenges is to get him to pronounce words that are readable, and because he talks so fast. We can accept that in live action. You can see that and it's no problem. But you got to draw this. You have these drawings that have to be able to communicate that the mouth is moving and it's moving in the right syllables and vowels, shape of the mouth, and you have the eyes and the nose and everything else, and the body language that goes along with the dialogue that's being spoken. So that's challenge. So every character has a challenge.
All right. So this question is anonymous, but they want to know, what advice do you have for artists or people of color trying to work in a still very white place to both break through but also take care of themselves?
Well, Yeah, just do the best you can with what you have where you are. I mean, that would be the advice that I've tried to follow. There's been times when things have been said or implied or even discouragement. But I remember being at Disney for not very long, a couple of months, and being told um, by the management that you never animate here. But I went back to my desk and did the best job I could with the in betweens from Frank. He wasn't complaining. And as long as I was being doing what he asked me to do, that's all I could do. I had no control over what others said or what others felt. It's just that what I was doing is my job, and to the best of my ability. When they say something, the old saying, if life throws you lemons, make lemonade. But in order to make lemonade, you have to have some water, a pitcher, and some sugar. And then literally that is your preparation. What are you doing to prepare yourself? You can't sit around and say, poor me, they're not gonna allow me to do this, color of my skin or my accent, and so woe with me. You got to get out there and do what you can, with what you got, where you are. And if you do the best you can in those situations, and no telling what doors will open for you, but you have to be ready to step through those doors. And that comes with preparation. My preparation came with the fact that I took my high school art teacher's advice and started carrying a sketchbook. And that's been the lifeblood of my acceptance into Disney Studios, my pen and ink work, which has won awards, and my quick sketching book. I'm not the best artist in the world, no, by a long shot, but I practice basic shapes, 4 basic shapes: square, the circle, the rectangle, and the triangle. Balance, proportion, perspective, silhouette value. By exercising those elements, I've been successful in 3 aspects. So exercising the basics are what's going to elevate you from the pack. So, regardless of the color of one's skin, or, it's just a dab of hard work, doing the best you can with what you got where you are.
That was really great revisiting that interview with Ron. So insightful, and I just loved how wide ranging it was. Well, let's now get into our museum updates. Join us for a special month-long screening of Cinderella, the Disney Studios' long-awaited return to long-form single-story animation after World War II, and experience the classic tale of overcoming adversity to find true love with the help of a fairy godmother, a dash of magic, and some furry friends. But watch out for Lucifer the Cat. See our calendar for showtimes.
Join us Saturday, March 2nd for a special screening of The Inventor, a stop-motion journey through Leonardo da Vinci's curious mind and groundbreaking inventions. Written and directed by Jim Capobianco, known for his Academy Award-nominated story work on Disney and Pixar's Ratatouille. Following the screening, Capobianco will give a presentation on the making of the film. Visit our calendar to get your tickets.
Jim Capobianco, friend of the museum. Excited to see that and see what it took to make this particular film. I've loved all the little stills that we've been able to see and kind of the lead up to this program, so I'm really excited to actually see it in full form. As a reminder, you can now see the host of the Mickey Mouse Club, Jimmy Dodd's mouse guitar, on display in our awards lobby. Of course, this is different from the merchandise plastic mouse guitar that has been in our galleries that you can also go see. This is the original wooden one. This is part of our continued celebration of the Walt Disney Company's 100th anniversary. Throughout this year, we'll have more exciting objects rotating on display in that space. See this object on display now through the end of the month.
Well, we hope you get a chance to see this very special mouse guitar on view for a limited time. And while you're here, don't miss our special exhibitions currently on view. Disney Cats and Dogs, and Possibilities Unleashed, a pet portrait exhibition.
And now it's time for our collections clash. Before we get started, let's look at last month's results. The category in celebration of the new year was resolutions, and whatever that meant to Bree and I, which resulted in a lot of really interesting object juxtapositions. For round one, it was between Bree's pick of Walt's resolution to own his character with the object of an animation drawing from Steamboat Willie, and my pick of the resolution of Walt's education, represented by his honorary doctorate degrees. Bree won the round with her pick that got 85% of the votes.
For round two, it was between Chris's pick of Walt's resolution to make Mary Poppins, represented by Walt's copy of Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers, and my pick of Walt's resolution to move out to Hollywood to make movies, represented by the Bell and Howell film camera. Chris's pick won the round with 65% of the votes.
For the final round, it was between Bree's pick of Walt's resolution to make nature documentaries, represented by the Aeroflex camera, and my pick of the resolution of Walt's relationship with the Chenard Art Institute, represented by an art schoolbook. I won the round with 65% of the votes, the exact same percentage as the round before. Interesting.
Chris, who are you paying?
Not enough. I should have gotten the clean sweep. People just don't care about honorary doctorate degrees anymore.
At least I got one win out of that round. Well, congrats on your win, Chris. And for this month, we do have a repeat category. So last February, back in 2023, the category was love, represented in objects about those who loved or were loved by Walt, as well as different types of love featured in the many films during Walt's lifetime. Chris and I will each pick 3 objects representing love and make a case for each one. At the end of the main round, you, the audience, will get a chance to vote for your favorite on our Instagram story. We will also feature some of our honorable mentions, so stay tuned for that at the end. Chris, since you won last month, kick us off.
For my first pick, I'm going with the Oscar bracelet Walt gave his wife, Lily. For background, this golden bracelet is referred to as the Oscar bracelet because it features miniature versions of the Academy Awards Walt received. The 18-karat gold bracelet is comprised of 20 statuette-shaped charms, representative of the first 20 Oscars Walt received. This is so because, as Walt discovered, for each Oscar a person won, they could purchase one in miniature. Walt decided to then make them into a piece of jewelry to acknowledge the prominent role Lily had played in his professional success. Funnily enough, the bracelet was also a way for Walt to get himself out of the doghouse, so to speak. Not Pluto's doghouse, but the colloquial doghouse. Walt had been nominated for 4 Academy Awards for the ceremony in 1955, and he didn't think he'd win any. So he told Lily it wouldn't be worth the trouble for her to attend. Of course, Walt ended up sweeping all 4, so Lily was justifiably upset that she hadn't attended. Thus, the Oscar bracelet made the perfect gift for many reasons.
Well, I love the Oscar bracelet, and it's probably close to one of my favorite objects in the museum. I feel like I can't just pick a favorite, but that one would definitely, it's a winner, some would say. Well, for my first pick, I'm going with a drawing from the film Dumbo that features Jumbo Jr. and his mother, Mrs. Jumbo, representing a mother's love. Now, this artwork is a pastel concept drawing of little Jumbo Jr. holding onto his mother's tail, and both are dressed in their best circus attire. Now, the film Dumbo captured the hearts of the world with the love of a mother who fights to protect her son. We see throughout the opening scenes of the film how much Mrs. Jumbo loves her baby and defends him fiercely against the children attending the circus who just mercilessly tease little Dumbo. I feel bad even calling him Dumbo, knowing that his real name is Jumbo Jr., but just to keep it straight, I feel like a bully, but I'm going to continue with using the name Dumbo throughout.
He is the titular character in the film Dumbo, so I feel like, it'll be easier for a lot of people listening to know who we're talking about.
Exactly. Well, and arguably one of the most heartbreaking scenes in Disney animation history, Timothy Q. Mouse takes Dumbo to see his mother when she's locked away in what the other elephants describe as solitary confinement. Chained inside her cell, she's only able to rock her baby through the slats with her trunk. Oh, that image is like seared into my mind. We also see all the other mother animals in the circus kind of tenderly and sweetly slumbering with their babies. So they're not behind these bars. Timothy sheds a tear, and I know audiences around the world did as well. Well, the song Baby Mine continues to break hearts, and I know I can't listen to it without getting a little choked up. So I just wanted to read through, not play the music, but read through some of the lyrics of the song. Rest your head close to my heart, never depart, baby of mine. If they knew sweet little you, they'd end up loving you too. All those same people who scold you, what they'd give just for the right to hold you. From your head to your toes, you're not much, goodness knows, but you're so precious to me, cute as can be, baby of mine. Baby Mine would go on to be nominated for an Academy Award in 1941.
Wow, bars. And not just the ones holding Mrs. Jumbo back from her son.
Oh, Chris.
Well, great pick, Bree. It is a snake style, not an elephant style draft, so you get the next pick.
Well, for my second pick, I'm going with Walt's labor of love, his caboose car for the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad, which was solely designed and kind of decorated by Walt. So Walt wrote in Railroad magazine in October 1965, quote, "My special pride was the caboose, which I furnished entirely in miniature, right down to the pot-bellied stove." Now, when it came to the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad, Walt devoted special care to the design of the bright yellow caboose. He created all the furnishings by hand, fashioned bunks, clothes lockers, washstands, oil lamps, even the brass doorknobs and actual working spring latches, and a potbelly stove to all the exact scale of the rest of the train. He had patterns made up for the pot-bellied stove. I know we featured that previously on past Collections Clash. And he ended up casting around 100 of them in different metals, including bronze, black, and even gold. On display, you unfortunately can't see the inside of this carefully designed interior, but just know a lot of love went into the design when you see the train on display in our galleries.
Well, and speaking of objects with a lot of love in them, my next pick is Walt's bronzed hat. And it's been a while since we've told this story, and I know it's one of your favorites, Brie. So here's the background. In the 1930s and 40s, Walt was known to keep up with the fashion of wearing all sorts of hats, many of which Lily was not particularly fond of. Often at the center of the laughter and fun was one of Walt's beloved hats, which, to Lily's dissatisfaction, he often wore at a jaunty, rakish angle. When Lily asked Walt to fix his hat, he would often respond by crushing the hat in an exaggerated manner on his head, which would only cause Lily to take the hat from him altogether, in a playful manner, of course. While vacationing in Mexico, Lily and Walt attended a bullfight where tradition dictates the spectators throw their hats into the ring, which is where I believe the idiom comes from. Lily swiftly grabbed the hat off of Walt's head, planning to toss the hat away. Walt was too fast, though, and he grabbed it back before it disappeared. Later, Walt surprised his wife with the same hat. He had it bronzed, shaped the brim into a heart, and filled it with violets for her birthday in 1941. At first, Lily thought the gift itself was a lovely floral arrangement, but when she removed the flowers from what appeared to be their vase, she discovered Walt's favorite hat. The crown had been pressed into the shape of a heart, and the entire hat had been preserved in bronze. Walt had finally done what Lily had asked. He had permanently fixed his hat. For Walt, the preservation of the hat in bronze symbolized the ways in which his and Lily's laughter and love withstood the test of time.
Chris, that was a special pick. I always love hearing the story of the bronze hat. We're going to keep it moving with the snake style draft. You have the next pick.
Well, for my final pick, kind of as a callback to you picking the Dumbo artwork, I'm going with a symbol of Walt's love for his daughters, the Griffith Park bench. Walt Disney once said, quote, "A man should never neglect his family for business." In addition to driving his daughters, Diane and Sharon, to school every day until they were of driving age, Walt would spend Sundays, or Daddy's Day, with his girls, including a regular trip to Griffith Park to ride the carousel. As Walt tells it, he would sit on a nearby bench, just like this one, eating peanuts, thinking to himself that there should be an amusement enterprise that parents and children could enjoy together. Unsurprisingly, this daydream eventually coalesced into Disneyland Park and opened a prolific chapter in both Walt's life and the company's history.
Love that. I love that interpretation of a bench. What a great pick. So for my last pick, I'm going with the love Walt and Lillian had for their daughters, represented by the Carmen Miranda doll that was gifted to Diane after Walt's trip to South America. That's on display in our galleries. In the fall of 1941, Walt and Lillian and a hand-picked group of artists made their Goodwill tour to South America on behalf of the United States government. They traveled to Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and other countries to gather research for a series of Good Neighbor films that would end up becoming The Three Caballeros and Saludos Amigos. After 3 months away from home, Walt and Lillian reunited with their daughters, Diane and Sharon. Diane recalled when her parents arrived back in Los Angeles, her and Sharon each received a doll. On display in our galleries in our South America tour section is Diane's Lenchy doll depicting the Brazilian actress Carmen Miranda. In our collection, we do have Sharon's doll, which is a Bahiana doll. Diane recalled, quote, "The South America trip made a big impression on both Sharon and me. I would have been 8 years old at the end of that year, and they were gone for 3 months. In their welcoming home, I got this wonderful doll. It was as big as I was," end quote. While we know Walt's love for his daughters was immense, I love this little insight on how Walt was feeling about being away from them for so long. He wrote to his previous teacher, Daisy Beck, after he returned to Los Angeles, quote, "In all, we were gone 12 weeks, and I could have stayed longer, but we were homesick for the kids. And of course, they were tickled to see us come home, all of which made us very happy," end quote.
Well, and I'm sure they were happy to get their new dolls. So
Yeah.
everybody won. Now it's time for our honorable mentions. For my first honorable mention, I'm going with the wall of condolence telegrams sent to the family and the Walt Disney Company following Walt's passing. The variety of condolences from family and friends to entertainment executives to world leaders really just showed how far-reaching Walt's influence and legacy were and symbolized the love that the world had for Walt.
It's a very tender pick. I like that one. For my first honorable mention, I'm going with the love between Walt's parents, represented by Flora's buttons that adorned her wedding dress that we have on display in our first gallery. On New Year's Day, 1888, Elias and Flora were married in her parents' home in Kismet, Florida. We don't have any photos from the wedding ceremony, but this wonderful artifact survived more than 136 years, representing the start of the union between Flora Call and Elias Disney. These buttons are black, inlaid in a terrazzo style with mother of pearl.
For my second honorable mention, I'm going with the pink and green floral miniature bedspread with a very special story. In addition to his famous habit of collecting miniatures, Walt also made some of his own. One of these pieces that Walt built is this miniature bed, the comforter of which was made from a dress that belonged to one of Walt's daughter, Diane's, dolls. Walt's interest in miniatures inspired him to look for more three-dimensional ways to entertain audiences, eventually leading to Disneyland. So I like this particular object in the same way that I like the Oscar bracelet. It's a symbol that the love Walt has for his family was not only personally important to him, but his professional success would not be possible without it.
Well, for my second honorable mention, I'm going with artwork on display from the animated sequence in So Dear to My Heart. And this film was so dear to Walt's heart. He shared, quote, "So dear was especially close to me. Why, that's the life my brother and I grew up with as kids out in Missouri," end quote. When making the film, many of the set pieces were so dear to Walt's heart as well. The red barn featured in the film was reportedly inspired by Walt's memory of the one from his own childhood on a farm in Marceline, Missouri. Walt even had John Cowles Jr. adapt the same structure for Walt's backyard workshop in his Holmby Hills home. You can still see this original barn on display in Los Angeles' Griffith Park. Walt also personally built a 1/8 scale model of Granny Kincaid's cabin from the film. This model was displayed at the Los Angeles Pan Pacific Auditorium in November 1952 as part of the Festival of Living show. You can see this miniature on display in Walt Disney Presents in Disney's Hollywood Studios and Walt Disney World Resort.
I guess you could say that that special miniature is so dear to Walt Disney Presents.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss to have a conversation about Disney love and not bring up one of his films. Of course, you brought up Dumbo before, but for my last honorable mention, I'm picking a lobby card from perhaps Walt's most well-known and beloved love story, Cinderella. If it's been a while since you've seen this film, remember, you can visit the museum this month to see it in our theater. Tie it all back.
There
Come
you
on
go.
down.
I love the synergy. Well, for my last honorable mention, I'm going with another gift Walt gave his daughter Diane. This time, I'm taking this category a little more literal. A symbol of love is a heart, so I'm going with an antique heart charm bracelet on display in our galleries. Diane recalled, quote, "Dad's gifts to Mother, Sharon, and me were very special. He favored antique jewelry, things with history. He gave Sharon and me beautiful antique bracelets over the years," end quote. And you can see this bracelet on display in our miniatures gallery.
Well, that brings us to the end of this lovely episode. Visit our Instagram stories today to vote on your favorite objects or email us at podcast@wdfmuseum.org to cast your votes or even share your thoughts and comments.
Thanks for tuning in to WDFM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all social channels at WDF Museum for all the latest updates.
Love may be a song that never ends, but this episode definitely has come to an end. Keep moving forward.
Bye.
Bye.